Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month we continue the theme of processing our pain. There's a quote from Eric Gershon. It says, "No one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom, from fear can come courage, from suffering can come strength if we have the virtue of resilience." Resilience is a word I feel I heard a lot more previously, but it's still a relevant word today. When we think about pain and when we process it, resilience is unique to the individual. Resilience could be something big. It could be a big step in healing, or it could just be getting out of your bed. Today, really, when we think about this month and when we think about remembering, last month was mental health, remembering our wellness. Today is a tribute, which notes and kind of implies that we are trying to remember that PTSD is something that affects a lot of us, our family members, our friends, and it's actually kind of new in the grand scheme of things. In the 1980s is when it was actually came into recognition as a mental illness and not because of human weakness. In some ways, I find that I feel sometimes we get lost in the diagnosing of things, but just like remembering our wellness last month, we remember these things because of the people. Today, really, it's just going to be me. Unfortunately, some scheduling issues prevented some guests to be able to record on time, but consistency is the key. Man, I feel this topic is important enough, and I do feel that sometimes, even at the last moment when you're trying to get things and you're having Mondays every single day of the week, I still find the importance of continuing the dialogue. So we're going to go about this with just myself. We did this about a year ago. I did a couple series just because I couldn't, certain guests weren't able to come on the podcast. But at the same time, I just want to say I do appreciate every single guest that has been on this podcast, and all the ones that are willing to do it today. And it's never easy to share something like this, so sensitive, and especially something that is can be a result or very personal to you, giving the world we live in today, but also that we are dealing a lot of times with the people closest to us. But before we begin, I always start with a disclaimer. If you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. In the U.S., it's 1-800-273-8255 is National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There's a quote, and then, because people have said it better than me, and Adam Braun said it this way. He said, "True self-discovery begins when your comfort zone ends." When I think about comfort zones, think about the holidays, some of the comfort foods that we're used to, but comfort zones a lot of times are what maybe something that we latch onto because it feels safe, feels familiar. But sometimes because we latch onto these comfort zones, at least from my experience, we don't look past the day we're in. And it's good to be present, but we don't really see sometimes a future ahead. Things become more impulsive on the way we react to them, and how we manage our boundaries and our time diminish. It becomes moment to moment, no planning of the future, because honestly, sometimes, at least from my experience, there was no future. There was just today. Some of the most notable songs kind of mention this. Today's the day, tonight's the night. And unfortunately, with that mentality, there's a lot of times no healing. Sometimes we gravitate to these ideas that our comfort zone is the closest thing to safety, the closest thing that I feel I'm better. Um, I've learned through my experience that my comfort zone held me back in this context. A lot of times when I hold on to my comfort zone, it kind of says a lot about my value or my value in myself. Um, there's a lot of ways we can tell ourselves um, not to do things or to do things, whether good or bad. And a lot of times we use the word value a lot, but a lot of times it's not valued. We don't value our time, and we're not really honest in defining what we are really struggling with. Um, Defining things in our lives, I feel, has helped me personally process pain. I had this question. A lot of the guests this month. Kelsey was last week, but um, about how have you been able to process pain in the past, and what has worked and what has not. What has not worked? Let's just go there. What has not worked is not taking the time to evaluate what is truly happening. Um, Not taking the time to address the concern you may have. Not taking the time to even recognize what emotion you're feeling and responding because of an urgency that surrounds you. There is, a lot of times in our lives, things happen, life events happen, and it's not ideal. Um, but if you don't give yourself time to look past the event itself, a lot of times we may have unrealistic expectations or ideas that, at least from my experience, is self-destructive, or better yet, not self-destructive, in one word, reckless. When we talk about comfort zone, sometimes the idea of not doing anything is an action, even though we don't feel it is. The idea to choose not yourself, not to invest, not in going out. If you say, I don't have, a lot of times, I don't have enough time. Time is such a funny construct because we never really do have enough of it. We say to ourselves, well, I can't do this because I don't have enough time. And it may be true at that moment, but I think one thing that hasn't helped in this question, what has worked and what hasn't worked, was when I didn't value myself to give myself to think about what I'm truly going through. When everyone else's opinion was more valuable than my own. When I didn't trust myself and my confidence lowered to the point where self-recognition and self-approval was more important than my own life or what I thought I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what hobby I wanted. I didn't think I deserved any of it. So time kept slipping away, and everything was based on something externally, and I avoided any way to process any pain that I may have been going through. And I wouldn't even know it if I did. And at the same time, what has worked? Well, being uncomfortable. Tell you that much. When the ceiling kind of dropped for me, when I realized that I was an awesome sauce, that honestly, I'm not going to be great at everything, or even great at one thing I want to be great at. When I really began to realize how human my life was, and that my pain was just like many others, but it didn't make the pain not important. When I was able to kind of define what I was going through and address it when I knew that things could be taken away from me. Like life events, when you walk out the door, can happen in a split second. Not that it's easy, but when I started to evaluate myself, when I was able to process the pain, then I really felt I was moving towards growth. It wasn't because of one thing. It wasn't because of one speech or one church or one job or one person in my life. It is a combination. And one thing I realized as I continue moving forward is everything's really connected in a weird kind of convoluted way. I knew that certain things were connected, but how I react, even if I had a bad relationship in my past, will bleed over into how I view and how I see other people in my life today. And it's not easy. It's not easy to go back there. It's easy to kind of minimize and be on the surface on a lot of things in our lives. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience. One thing is, a lot of this stuff is individualized. What I say today is not something that can even be modeled for anyone else, because pain, when we think about pain and post-traumatic stress disorder, those who are coming back from experience any form of trauma, it's unique to the individual. And to fully answer the part of what has worked, valuing myself, understanding the word value, and saying that what I think, my opinion does have weight. If I make a mistake, I made a mistake. It's not anyone else's mistake. One thing when I realize how human I am, I also realize how human everyone else is. And when it boils down to it, any title, anything of that nature, is only substance, only reason it is as important. Sometimes I could see is it provides some security in some ways, whether it be financial or relational. But at the end of the day, value is feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling that you have purpose, feeling that your decisions, whether I guess in a way, being creative is brave. Going out there and sharing a bit about yourself, knowing it's not perfect, knowing that you'll make mistakes, and being okay because those mistakes don't define you. This question is not static. I think it'll continue changing as I grow older, as I kind of look at my life at a different lens. One thing I want to say is Revive Ministries is a pod does not proselytize. I kind of look at the model as outreach, truly outreach. And I say this because sometimes I feel the word Revive Ministries can seem heavy for some of the people listening or just looking at the name. But I want to reassure that this podcast was something that I thought through of how do we continue to talk about topics like this without feeling like I have to toe that line in my head of so it was very complicated, to tell you the truth, in the very beginning of how to define what this podcast, what this ministry was. And it came down to a few things. And I just want to share with that as we proceed. Revive Ministries, visually, I think of the idea is that, like I said, a medical missionary. You go, the ones that go to other countries and share resources, maybe medical, dental. But one thing, at least my experience, and that's going back to what has been helpful in processing the pain. And I think this is kind of focal point, along with one other point, is being heard. When I was able to kind of understand that we're all human and we do have faults and we do make mistakes, being perfect, having the right message, or having the right anything, or being 100% correct in anything became heavy. This podcast is to inspire hope, and some of that hope, some of the process of it is painful. The word I've been using a lot, hereth, a homesickness for someone who cannot return to. Let me read. A homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to. The nostalgia and grief for the lost places of your past, places that never were. The worry is when we are in our comfort zone, we can get lost in the place that never was. I thought this word was haunting, but at least from my experience, felt very familiar. I've been to my hereth. I held on to my hereth. Sometimes we are way too accommodating and hold on to our comfort zone so close and avoid the painful truth we all may face at times. The words are simple to say. It is not easy. But one thing is, just like everything, looking past today, healing, you have, at least from my experience, you have to look past, understand, and give yourself grace to heal. When you lose someone, it takes time, maybe your whole life. There's no shortcuts. And I feel that was very helpful for me in processing our pain, when I was able to define the fact that this will take maybe my entire life. But during that journey, I will learn and I will grow. There was another question as we proceed that I wanted to kind of mention and ask, put on the screen. I asked this, I think I asked this to Kelsey last week. What have been some notable elements that changed the way you looked at pain you went through to be where you are today? I think there's a quote I would say, and I'm paraphrasing, but courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling fear, but proceeding forward. And I would say, in the context of processing, which denotes the idea of thinking and tackling the problems that we may be facing, Albert Einstein says it in a way that I felt very unique, that I heard recently. And he quotes, "People say I'm smart." And he says, "The only difference is that I stayed with the problem longer." And we talk about time, and we talk about, I have not enough time. A lot of times we look at value as just monetary. But as if anyone has lost anyone, or someone's not here today, money can't buy back the people we love. We can't return them to the fold in the way we would like. So value comes in very many different shapes and sizes. As I talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, as I pay tribute to this topic, I always want to reassure those who are listening that, and well, in a way, I want to encourage for wherever you are around the world to find what resources are there. In the beginning of each podcast, I always give a disclaimer. I'm going to give it again. If you're in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help. The crisis hotline is 1-800-273-8255. I do believe they will be having a shorter number coming soon, but this is the one I know. Some people I remember have said, "Oh, I don't." They don't really find much value in these numbers when it comes to the National Suicide Prevention. I wouldn't call them. I need to talk to a person in person. And that's why I always say, find what resources work for you. It may be a church. It may be a group. Maybe your buddy. Maybe a friend. Maybe a spouse. So processing our pain, just like Mental Health Awareness Month, is something unique to the individual. And why do we pay tribute to these things? Because of the people that are attached to them. Final thoughts, I would say, simply put, remind yourself that the mistakes you make are ones that don't define who you are. At the end of the day, hindsight is 2020. I believe when we're able to pull ourselves back and realize that the process of growth, the process of moving forward, requires a degree of mistakes and a degree of pain. There is, how I say, growing pains to life. The idea that we will continue to face challenges is expected. The illusion, I would say, from my experience, that we hold on to some comfort zone to embalm the idea of what we were or how things were, I feel, at least from my experience and from what I've seen and what I've take from that type of perception, is it doesn't allow for any growth. In Revive Ministries Podcast, we're promoting the idea of inspiring hope. Inspiration has to grow. Inspiration is not maintained. Our lives keep changing. So anyone who is listening may find value, may get something from what I say or what anyone else says on this podcast, which makes what I do, what this podcast does, not only for me but for those listening, so unique. And I just feel very grateful. I feel very grateful, and I want to say, I don't normally say, thank you to all the listeners, all the new and old guests, the ones who want to, the one that couldn't make it today to record. I just want to say thank you. This is not about, how you say, getting the right the first time. It's about continuing the dialogue. And I want to just say that whatever you're going through, whatever you're facing, find resources. If it is crisis, please find resources that may be helpful. Tell someone if you don't feel safe. If you feel like you want to harm yourself or you just don't care to move on, find help today. At the same time, when you are doing better, always remember that it is nice to be reminded of the good times. And it's also nice to hold on to those memories. But I want to encourage, at least I try to encourage myself, that my best day, that kind of mentality, has not yet come. So when we're able to look past just today, when we're able to kind of look that I'm excited for next week, when I'm excited for next month, when I'm excited for next year, I feel that has been proven to be helpful in my processing my pain. That's when I start putting value back into the word value, is when I'm excited, when I look towards the future, not in regret, not in, even when I have those moments, those Mondays repeated, I look towards the future. And we used the word resilience before, and I want to bring it up one last time. Was Eric Gershon. He says, no one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom. From fear can come courage. From suffering can come strength. If we have the virtue of resilience, be kind to yourself. Allow yourself time to just process and to evaluate your life. What is important to you is unique to each one. So I just want to say thank you for those listening. And remember to stay updated with Revive Ministries Podcast. New content by ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast. Leaving you with the last quote is from Neil Strauss. It says, people go through so much pain trying to avoid